Welcome into Fitness Fanatics on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Now here are your hosts, Jeff and Nicole Essig.
All right, welcome back to the Fitness Fanatics. Man, we've had just a ball of laughs the first hour. So if you guys missed any part of the show, you can check us out on theticketfm.com, any of your favorite podcasting platforms. All the shows are out there. But yeah, if you want some laughs, mainly at my expense, they're there. Because I was laughing so hard, I've had some tears in my eyes. It was a lot of fun. And we could keep doing that for not just the next hour, but probably the next month. But I know Andrea goes to church, and we're getting her out of church today, which, sometimes could be a blessing. But Donnie takes the kids to church to stay at home. So no, I'm just kidding. But hour number 2 is sponsored by Modern Woodmen of America. Founded in 1883, Modern Woodmen offers financial services and member benefits to individuals and families throughout the U.S. For more information, call Sean Erickson at 402-483-6515 to start the conversation today. Modern Woodmen of America, touching lives, securing futures. So big shout out to Sean and the crew over there. We appreciate all their support of the Fitness Fanatics and everything they do for us. All right, so now I'm going to properly introduce Andrea because she's more than just my sister.
Yes.
Andrea is a licensed clinical social worker and provides therapy in her private practice. She specializes in trauma, grief, anxiety, OCD, and ADHD. So what we want to focus on today, because Andrea, we talked about this a few months ago, and mainly focused on the ADHD and kind of what you have gone through personally over the last few years in your life. Not only discovering that you had ADHD, but also how it has affected you with nutrition and exercise and how you looked at food and all that. So it's just a very cool conversation I thought would be great to share with all of our listeners, because we have, millions of listeners
very
across
relatable.
the world. All right. So Andrea, the floor is yours. I'm ready to learn.
The floor is mine. Okay, so here's what I'm worried about. I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, and literally do with my job. So I have I wrote stuff down of what I want to get to try to stick to. But first of all, with Nikki, it's Nicole. Sorry,
it's okay.
I was I'm gonna have to try to say Nicole.
I think people
it is ADHD is so misunderstood in the last couple of years. Thanks to social media, we call it pop psychology. It's so good that there's so much awareness about different mental health stuff, but then also there's so much misinformation that can be really harmful. But everyone thinks, ADHD, that's the 6-year-old boy that can't sit still in first grade, right? Girls didn't have ADHD, but because ADHD in females was not studied until, recently. Of course, the 1900s to us is still recent. But anyway, it's so misunderstood. People think it's not a real thing, or we just medicate people because we, don't want to, work harder or whatever. So it's my journey has been, I guess, through grad school, when I learned more about it, I was like, oh, okay, sounds like I have ADHD. That really fits, right? Because in women specifically, it can be hyperactivity, but lots of times the hyperactivity is internal, because girls, we call it masking. Excuse me. Girls learn, well, I can't get up and run around the classroom like the boys do. I have to sit still, I have to follow the rules. And so the hyperactivity becomes internal. If you guys could see me in my seat right now, how my feet are moving, how I'm fidgeting with things on the table. Anyway, in girls, it can look more it looks like laziness, disorganization, different things. So I thought, oh, that really sounds like me. And then I just didn't really understand how it really affected me. It was just something I lived with. And it wasn't until I got into private practice, my older boys started having all of their activities, and everyone had to be in different places, that all of a sudden, I was drowning. And it was actually a friend I work with pulled me aside, and she was like, hey, let's maybe talk about talking to your doctor about getting some medicine. I was like, oh no, is it that bad? Because I would show up to work, with everything, I had my laptop, but not my charger, like I say I was a mess. So a lot of it was, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And that's the big thing why it's so important for me, with anyone in my life, with my clients, with me, to recognize it's my brain. There's nothing wrong with me. It's my brain. To kind of unhook from that shame of, why can't I do all of these things that everyone else can do? So
I do have a question really
yeah.
quick, which if you've kind of answered it as you were talking, because I feel like for me, those issues have been much more prevalent, just probably within the last 5 or 6 years for myself. But then you say things like disorganization. And I remember a time in 3rd grade that like my teacher had to call my mom in to come and clean out my desk because it was so
Right.
bad and so
Right.
disorganized. So now I'm thinking like maybe that was always the case. Is it common for women to not recognize the symptoms until they get older? I know I had a lot of like kind of childhood trauma, so probably it wasn't high on my list of priorities. But is that common for women? Is that something, I mean, probably men too, but is that more common for women, or is it more common for it to start when you're older? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, if you have ADHD, you've always had it because
Okay.
it's the neurodevelopment of your brain, which is part of the diagnosis. You have to go back to childhood. But absolutely, so many women are undiagnosed or diagnosed with anxiety and depression when really it's ADHD because, when you have 10,000 things that you're always behind on, it causes anxiety or, you feel really depressed because what is wrong with me? And a big thing with girls and women, like I mentioned, the masking, we learn to present on the outside like we're okay. And I've had a lot of people be like, well, you went to college, you went to grad school, like how could you have ADHD? Well, I did all those things and it was really, really hard. Like, you can still be successful, but there's people with typical brains that probably had an easier time than I did because the same thing, I may have gotten good grades, but I never knew where my textbooks were or what homework was due, because I had no organization around it. And organization, when we talk about it, is not just like how your pantry looks. It's how you organize your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's been a big thing with me. And I've had tons of clients, and I don't therapy, like if diet, nutrition, that stuff comes in, I make it very clear, like I'm not a nutritionist. I'm not here to we don't talk about diet. But when they're like, why can't I be consistent? Why can't I do this? All of the things. And, there's so many times have you ever thought you have ADHD? Has anyone ever said that? And sometimes it's, oh yeah, but, or, well, no, like, why would I have ADHD? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Just saying if you have it, you've always had it.
Yes.
Kind of like,
Well, and
okay.
when you say like your clients say, well, why would I have it, right? Because and we on this show we don't say average Joe, we say average Jeff, right? Because the average Jeff, which is me, like what you talked about at the beginning, is like, oh, this is something that kids go through, right? That my kid has this, my kid has that.
Well, we think that because when it became more mainstream, that's kind of the age we were. So it was like other kids in our class that were getting diagnosed with it, or maybe our siblings that were getting diagnosed with it. Like, so I think that's part of it too. When it became mainstream.
Yeah, and people think you can grow out of it. Like I've had clients say, "Oh yeah, I had it when I was a kid, and my parents made me take medicine, but I grew out of it."
Mm-hmm.
Well, you don't, and that's what without like, trying to stay, well, whatever. It's a neurological issue. It's not a behavioral issue. Our behavior exists for neurological reasons. It's a medical issue. It's not a personality trait. People, oh, I'm so ADHD. Well, you're not, unless your brain has the disorder. Neurodevelopment disorder, meaning the nervous system. I heard you say rest and digest, Nicole, earlier. So I know you guys know a little bit about all that, but our nervous system, including our brain, develops and functions differently. And the differences in the brain development structure cause differences in behavior, which is why strategies for neurotypical people don't work and aren't successful for ADHDers. And that's where, like, I knew that, I learned that, but like actually understanding it and how does that apply to me? What are my behaviors that I've tried to change or do, and I just can't? And I compare it a lot to other disorders or disabilities that people have. And, we say neurological issue. And so someone might think like Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Well, someone with Parkinson's that's like shaking or, having tremors, no one's like, hey, just try harder not to do that. Like just try to be still. No one would say that, right? Because they know it's a neurological disorder. So it's the same as ADHD, except for it's invisible. It's an unseen disability. And that was really hard for me. You don't have to say you have a disability if you have ADHD, but that's where I was really able to accept and change things. It was actually my therapist that said to me, she was like, if you didn't have an arm, would you expect to be able to do things like other people that have two arms? Of course not. And that's what I was doing to myself. Well, I should be able to just get up early. I should be able to just do this, but I don't have an arm. And so I have to, it doesn't mean I can't do all the things I want to do. Just like someone with Parkinson's, it doesn't mean, oh, well, now your life's over. You can do treatment, therapy, medicine. You just have to accommodate and find things that work for your brain, which is, what you and I, Jeff, were talking about that has kind of made a big difference with me specifically with diet and nutrition.
Yeah. So that's kind of my next question. So how long after you had gotten your diagnosis did you make that connection because like you said, there's so many other things about ADHD that is like obvious when you really think about it, like the disorganization and stuff like that. Like mine is, I have just the shortest attention span, and it only gets worse as I'm getting older. And
yes.
And so like that, there's different, like a hierarchy of things that you want to, tackle.
Sure. Yeah.
So how long was it after your diagnosis that you were able to really make that connection where how ADHD was kind of, keeping you from those health and fitness goals that you had, or health and nutrition goals?
It was definitely one of the later things. Like I started to realize really how much it was impacting work and just managing the household. I do want to touch on real quick, this is probably a whole other, hour that we don't have time for, but Nicole, when you were saying that it's gotten worse, there's a whole thing with perimenopause, women in their 40s. Neurotypicals in perimenopause can start presenting like they have, some ADHD symptoms, irritability, memory loss, fatigue. So the super fun thing about when you do have ADHD is it's just so exasperated by everything that's happening in our bodies. And that's, throughout a woman's life, through cycle, pregnancy. I always joked like I had pregnancy brain for 10 years after my babies. Well, now I know it was my ADHD. It's like having pregnancy brain my whole life. So I had, with the diet and nutrition, I had a moment, and it's so hard because, I'm a therapist. I didn't specialize in ADHD until I started digging into like, oh, this is my entire life. It affects me daily, moment to moment, and I would say that journey has been about 5 years, and there's still times where I'm like, oh my gosh, that's why I do that, or that's why that's hard. But I had a moment in my kitchen, and it was at night, and I was, taking my nighttime vitamin or something, and we had the bowl of candy, and it was Easter time, and I reached for a Reese's cup, and I started opening it, and I was like, wait, I don't even want this. Like, I'm not hungry. I wasn't even thinking about this. And then I realized it was just the impulsivity of, oh, there's candy. I'm going to eat it without thinking. Or maybe, just I needed that hit of dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a moment where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have like a food problem. I don't have I'm not addicted to food. I don't, it's my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it got into all the different areas of, I have 100 examples that we can get into later, but I always say like packing my lunch for work. I prefer to do that. I don't want to have to go run and grab something or starve all day because I, don't have my lunch. But to pack a lunch, that means I have to have gone shopping so I have food. I have to make the food. I have to pack the food. I have to remember to take it with me to
Mm-hmm.
work. The number of times I did all the things, but then left it on the kitchen counter and got to work and went, crap, I don't have my lunch,
Mm-hmm.
So that is kind of the start of where I started really digging into, and I can get more into, I've mentioned like dopamine and, different things, but maybe break down a little bit about what actually is ADHD besides just that it's neurological, so we can understand like how it shows up.
Yeah, let's get into that. We do need to take a break.
Yeah, hold on before we go to break, because
Oh.
one thing that I want to is if it fits in, because we've had just talking, obviously we've talked to so many people that have had weight loss transformations, and two of our national challenge participants who are in a year-long challenge, Mark Onweiler was one of ours here in Lincoln that won $10,000. He talked about how about binge eating, and so did we had another guest, Tiffany, that she talked about this too, and how she would, go off on the way home from work. She would stop like at a fast food place. She would eat an entire meal, but then go home and pretend like she hadn't just eaten a meal. Mark would say the same thing. He would stop at Little Caesars and get a pizza, and he would eat the whole pizza, throw it away, and then still go home and have a meal because he didn't want his family to know about it. So if there's a way and I think that's very common.
Yeah. For
So
sure.
so if there's a way that we can kind of talk about that and tie that in too,
Yeah.
because I just think that's so common. I thought that was interesting that we've had two national challenge people talk about it. So
Yeah.
we'll go to break.
Yep, we'll go to break. We'll be right back. Stay with us. 93
Okay.
The Ticket, Fitness Fanatics. Let's get to the main issues.
Yes.
All right, so let's go ahead and keep that conversation going. Back to Nicole. What you were wanting to tie a couple things together about
just
the binge eating?
Yeah, just is
Yeah.
that? It's so common. So just like
Yes.
I'm sure that that's something that's relatable, and I think for most people. Okay, so I famously tell our members that they're not special all the time, but the
Right.
context of that is like the things in your head that keep you from reaching your goals because you think you can't do something. That doesn't make you special. That makes you normal. And I think
Right.
sometimes when you can normalize something, it
Right.
makes it less scary. So that's why I say they're not special. It's not
Yeah.
like me being mean, but
Right.
so I think that that's just something that people need to hear, how it's common, and how, like you said, with that Reese's peanut butter cup, that you're just like, this is my brain. It's not, so I think that just talking about it makes people,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not special. Maybe this does make me normal. Maybe there are tools available to me.
For sure. So I'll get to the binge eating and like the fast food, because those are really good examples. Try to summarize as quickly as I can what ADHD actually is in our brain. Another quick analogy that I got from a book one time and really love is like that our brains have an error code. We have appliances, all the things that get error codes. If we try to print something, it's not printing. We could try again, or we could, try harder, bang on it, whatever. But if it shows an error code, we're going to look it up. Oh, the error code is out of paper. Okay, I'm going to put in paper, and then it's going to print, right?
Mhm.
So no matter, it works better than if you're just trying, let's try it again. So when you know the error code in our brains, we know then what to do with it instead of, all of the other things we've learned or whatever.
Mhm.
Okay, so as quickly as I can, the disorder is in our frontal lobe, the front of our brain, which is where we have emotional regulation, decision making, logic, reasoning, all of the things that we need to exist every day. And it's the part of our brain that doesn't develop until like early to mid 20s. Earlier for women, a little later. So
it's your fault, Jeff, that my brain is the way it is.
Yep,
You were my biggest influence in my early 20s.
Yep. That's true. That's
well, okay,
100%.
so that's another. I feel like I could just be on every week with you guys because that's another thing. All of the messages, that we get, but it's what it's not developed. So when we say to our teenagers, like, what were you thinking? What, I don't know. It wasn't because their brain's not fully developed.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're kids, but it's as if we're living with an underdeveloped brain. Some people call it a lazy frontal lobe. So there's that. And then we have the dopamine issue. Dopamine is like the reward chemical, right? I know if I go take a walk, I'm going to get that dopamine and it's going to feel good. And that's going to be my reward. I know if I, pay my bills, it's going to be done and that's going to feel good. So
it's like a survival instinct. We kind of need it to survive. Otherwise we wouldn't do the stuff we need to do. Right.
Yes. And so, ADHD brain can produce less dopamine, but also a lot of people think the dopamine's there. It just ironically kind of gets lost. It doesn't get transmitted. So that's where it becomes like a motivational issue, right? I know you guys probably talk a lot about motivation, how it's kind of a crock, like you just got to do it.
Yeah.
So it's ADHD causes a motivation deficit. We cognitively know the things are good, but we don't have that chemical transmitting to our brain to tell us if you do it, it'll be good. And then, so a big thing is executive functioning skills. We all these are things that I think should be just normal conversation for people, but people don't know unless they, have been diagnosed or whatever. We all have executive functioning skills, which are skills we learn to execute functions basically. And they're accountability, time management, emotional regulation, organization, prioritizing is one. My brain doesn't know how to prioritize. Here's 1,000 things I want to do. And my brain doesn't know to be like, well, this is what is urgent right now. Everything feels urgent. So that's a problem.
Like when you're supposed to be doing a simple task, like doing the dishes, and then I end up like having pulled out the oven and I'm cleaning behind the oven, which is not helping any.
Yes. And so on that, it's attention deficit, which is a bad name because it's not that we can't pay attention. We don't have focus. It's we don't have control on where our focus goes. Donnie all the time is like, go back to what you were saying. I'm like, I can't because now I'm over here, So all of that causes inconsistency. When you struggle with regulating and attention, everything's inconsistent. And what do you guys know and probably say all the time about nutrition and fitness? It's consistency. It's not perfection. It's not, right? It's just consistency. Well, when my brain is inconsistent all the time, it makes it really hard. And then another big thing is we have an interest-based nervous system instead of important-based. We do what is interesting, engaging, stimulating versus what we know is important. And that's where some of the shame and criticism comes in because people are like, well, just pay attention or just want to do it, right?
Just get up. Wake up and go to the gym.
Right.
It's done.
So, okay, that was my quick rundown. So then I have all of the examples of things that I've noticed. Oh, this is why I do that. And one of them, you mentioned fast food, like drive-thrus. So if you are thinking like, if I'm on the way home and I don't have dinner planned because I didn't think about it or I forgot to take something out of the freezer, if I stop at a drive-thru, it's instant, right? There's the dopamine. I don't have, I get that. That's the reward. Oh, now I have my food right away. And I don't have to do all of the work of going home, figuring something out, what can I defrost real quick? It's too many steps. And so fast food, and we say it's convenience, right? But I'm not just lazy and I don't want to go home and make dinner. It's just, it feels overwhelming and I can get a quick hit of the dopamine in the drive-thru. And so I would do that too. Why am I doing that? Why am I doing that? I don't even really like this food, but that's all of the reasons. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That's like us right now. Cause we're doing Whole30 and I'm so mad about it because it's very beneficial and I feel great and I know how to cook, but I have to cook everything. And
Yes.
so it's like the thought of doing it really makes me mad. But then
Yes.
when we're eating it and it tastes good and it's like, I know how to cook. This is good food.
Yes.
It's stupid that I'm mad about it. Although I
Yeah.
wasn't today because I'm gonna have cheese on my eggs. But
Yeah.
so yeah, we're going through that right now. Exactly. And it's forcing us to do it, which is why we like to do Whole30. Why can't we do it outside that 30 days?
And speaking of that, like nobody really knows how our brains work, but like for me, doing Whole30, like we've had these Reese's peanut butter cups on our counter this whole time.
Trader Joe's peanut butter cups.
So pre Whole30,
they'd be gone.
They literally they would be gone. Like I'd eat 2, 3, 4, but now it's like, now that I'm doing this, I literally don't even think about opening them, taking the wrapper off, eating peanut butter. I don't even think about it. It's like it's not even an option for me. So that's always been strange how my brain is working when it's like
that does not make you special.
It's not an option.
Right.
So my brain is like, nope. Like for example,
you don't
today
even see it anymore.
We would be just after the show, we'd be like, all right, should we get Casey's pizza? It's not even an option now. We're just going to go home and cook our lunch because we can't have Casey's pizza right now because we're doing the Whole30. So the Whole30 for me is also trying to just reset my brain to be like, Jeff, you don't.
But that doesn't work. Like, why doesn't that work in the long run then, Andrea?
Well, so that's what, I mean, there's all kinds of things, but with an ADHD brain, it's the inconsistency and the novelty of it. Like I'll go, I'll be super consistent with my walks, with my strength training, packing lunches, planning dinners for like 3 weeks. I'm nailing it. And then one day I don't. And then I'm like, okay, 2 weeks go by and I haven't done anything. And that's where it sucks. It sucks that I do that. But understanding all of the reasons why my brain is doing that and just accepting it instead of, what's wrong with me, just all of that shame. But there's a lot there, Jeff, with like when our brain gets used to it, it's habits. And then when you're, there's other food and nutrition, then you don't really think about those things. There's the accountability of it. You guys are doing it together. If it was just you and Nicole's eating the pizza, you might grab for, I'm having that peanut butter cup then.
Jeff did Whole30 once, and Katie and I had cheese sticks outside of the house, and he threw a fit when we got home, and he knew that we had Applebee's mozzarella sticks outside of his presence.
Not even a fries. So, yeah.
So, I mean, gosh, again, I could just forever talk about it. All of the work to do in it or that put into it can be overwhelming. And some people are like, well, it's just dinner. You just make it, right? Well, you don't struggle with that. Right. But I think of like, I historically have done the best with nutrition, fitness, all of the things when I wasn't working because I had more more time. Yes. But you guys, I'm sure you say like everybody has time.
Right.
But I had more emotional and mental energy to put into those things.
Yeah.
I go and sit with clients all day and I come home and sometimes like I'm done and it's physically too much for me to put effort into making a good dinner. So that's where if I've planned ahead, great. And I can do that sometimes I can't. So with the binge eating, that's another thing where, excuse me, a lot of people think, well, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? And of course that is, there's eating disorders, which eating disorders in people with ADHD are really, really high. For lots of reasons. We call it food noise, That's one of the things medicine has helped me. It doesn't like change my appetite really, excuse me, but the food noise can be gone. Where I'm not like thinking about food all day and that can go to the hyper focus. But I have a very specific memory before I really, understood ADHD. I would always eat a bowl of cereal at night. It was just what I did.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I ate it and then I went to go eat another one. And I was like, I don't want this. I'm not hungry. And as I'm pouring it, I was like, don't pour this. Don't pour this cereal. You don't want it. Like that part of my brain. But I poured it and I ate it. And I understand now, either I was hyper focused on it and your brain's like, no, you're going to eat that cereal. Or I just needed that stimulation, either the dopamine or the stimulation. And I've learned that, like, at night, if we're sitting down and we start watching a show, I'm not hungry. Sometimes I am. And if I am, I go eat, right? I'm not hungry, but I'm like, what's in the pantry? What can I go snack on?
Yeah.
And another memory is goldfish. There was one time we were watching something and I could not stop thinking about the goldfish in the pantry. I don't even really like goldfish. But I got up and I got goldfish. And I know now it's because I needed the stimulation. I was trying to focus on the television. And even if it's engaging or whatever, I still have that hyperactivity. And so going and getting a crunchy snack is stimulating to me. And that's the, like, fidgeting, neurodiversity, we call it stimming a lot, just a movement or a repetitive movement. So a crunchy snack was what I needed. And again, if I'm hungry, I'll go get it. But now if I know that, I can either try to change my focus on something else, or I eat pickles a lot. Jeff, I know you're big on that. I'll go get the crunch of a pickle. So that goes to that binge eating of all of that error code of why you keep getting the food. What is it that my brain is needing right now? We only know to replace it with food or feed it with food, so what is my brain actually needing that I can give it instead of, whatever I'm binging on.
Yeah. Well, let's take one more break.
Yep.
And then we can
That's our
talk
last
a little
break.
bit more about strategies too. And just, you're obviously, this is your job. So you're going to recommend that people actually seek help too. So we can kind of talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's go to a break.
All right. One final break here. We'll be back to finish up this show. So stay with us. 93.7 The Ticket, the Fitness Fanatics.
Now back to Fitness Fanatics on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right. Welcome back in here. Final segment, joined by my sis, Andrea, down in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Gosh, we've been talking a lot of ADHD, and I'm learning a lot. And I love it. I just texted her off break, and I was like, we could just have a monthly show.
I know.
Like once a month, we just talk what's on our mind.
Learn about your brain.
Learn about our brain, because gosh, and there's probably thousands, millions of other things that are going on in her brain that we still don't know.
Yeah, we probably got some more Jeff Essink memories back in the day.
Gems that we could unearth.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we just have a couple minutes here left with you. So Nicole, what were you wanting?
Just strategies. Like, okay. So at what point do you think that people need to go beyond just finding strategies and actually seek help? Because I do know that it's also difficult to get a diagnosis for some people too. So what are some of those strategies in lieu of, or how to get that to find out if it's even something that that someone has?
That's a really long answer, so I'll try to be as quick as I can. It's
really
short.
Hard.
Yep.
Yeah, it's super frustrating for me because it is really hard, and there was a huge spike in diagnosis during COVID, and that's because people's lives got turned upside down, and they're like, "Oh, now how do I do this?" and realizing it. But because medication for it is there's non-stimulants, but a stimulant is a controlled drug, then that makes it really hard to get it for people that really need it. There's lots of things to do in lieu of medicine. But if people are listening and are like, wait, this sounds like me. I always say, start with your PCP if you have a primary doctor and just say, hey, I'm wondering about this. And some of them are equipped to assess. And, I know some PCPs will just, if someone wants to try medicine, we'll do that. Otherwise, in lots of places, like I know in Tulsa, you have to see a psychologist first to get a diagnosis. Like my license allows me to diagnose. Yeah. I'm allowed by my license to diagnose, but a psychiatrist won't take that because and I talked to my psychiatrist about it. And she said, you would not believe the number of people I get every day calling and wanting to be seen. And so I hate it because it's gatekeeping, and someone with ADHD, it's so many more steps and wait lists and finances,
Yeah.
So you might have to see a psychologist to then get to a psychiatrist. Some psychiatrists might take you without a diagnosis. So it can be a lot, and it's really frustrating. I would ask, I would be curious because coffee is a stimulant, and caffeine, if you give a kid with ADHD caffeine, it calms them down. And so, paying attention to how like caffeine affects you, if it makes you focus, if it calms you down, versus like, getting you wired, that would give you a good idea of how maybe a stimulant would help you.
Mhm.
But I mean, hours and hours of like, I call them tips and tricks of things that you can do to accommodate your brain to real solutions for your specific struggles. And Nicole, you say, you're not special, but realizing, what is special, what is my struggle, it's what works for other people isn't going to work for me. So
surely
real
it works
solutions.
for someone somewhere. So like that, it shouldn't be something that you're like, well, this is just how I am.
Right.
If it's important to you, you should still be able to seek that at some point. Like,
Yes.
'cause somebody has dealt with it, surely.
Yeah. Yeah, and we're just talking about diet and nutrition, the way that it, affects my entire life is kind of overwhelming at times.
What are some like resources that you use? Like you had mentioned a book. Like, are there certain authors or books or content creators or?
Yeah, there's a few. The one that I love is called How to ADHD. And it's Jessica McCabe, McCabe. And so it's good because it's written for, the typical person to understand. There's a lot of like anecdote kind of things instead of, it's not real scientific. But she also has a website, How to ADHD, with a ton of resources on it. So that's a good starting place. And then there's another one that I really like called Your Brain's Not Broken. Because I would always say that my brain is broken. What is wrong with my brain? And it just really explains what's going on in your brain and what to do with it. And then real quick, I have this one right here. I found an ADHD planner because that's a big thing. The number of planners that I bought and never used. There's one, it's an Instagram page, Future ADHD, I think. But it's ADHD focused. You can see it right here. And it's Grace Kolma, Koelma. So she has a planner and then this workbook that is written for ADHD people. For example, her pages are undated. She's like, so you don't need the reminder that you put it down and didn't touch it for 2 weeks. Just pick it back up, And even in the book, she says you might read this all in a day, or you might read the first chapter and then, forget about it for a month. And so it's really validating, normalizing, unhooking that shame of all the things we should be able to do, like keep a planner.
Yeah. And I think those are good resources for people if you think it might help, but you don't have that access yet.
Right.
That's a good place to start. You can at least get an understanding. But
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And hopefully some people were like, wow, maybe I'm not special. Maybe I'm normal. Maybe not the only one.
All right.
So,
well, thank you for taking your time.
Yeah.
It was good to see you on the stream, since I don't see you in person very much. So that was nice.
No.
Yep.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.